Let me switch the recording. So today gonna be first grooming meeting where we will discuss the scope of milestone 3 and the all possible features which get to the scope of the milestone 3. We already had several features which been already started, and we even have several pull requests devoted to some of these stories in the scope of this backlog, and probably we can start discussion from the features already started, and currently in the scope of milestone 3 we have like bunch of stories, two stories devoted to the source and stock configuration API. These stories were started in a previous milestone by Sergey and Ricardo, and currently this pull request was a bit abandoned. I know the last time Sergey was working on it, he made all the tests green, but we were at the time of release testing, and we were at the time of the regression and the stabilizing the mainline branch. That's why Sergey switched to the bug fixing, and we need to get back to these stories and to recap what's the question we have there, because there were several questions regarding UI and the usability, and probably the first we need to do in the scope of the story is to clarify what whether first of all whether we need to involve some UI specialists or designers to help us, or we are good with the decision we already made in the scope of the stories. The next story in the scope of backlog is to provide full support for multi-sourcing into B2B edition, and currently Lars working on several issues from this track, and all that issues were found by Vadim, so by another guy from the tech division. And currently Lars took the ownership over this track. Another story is to provide full support of multi-sourcing for Elasticsearch adapter. Currently, as you know, we provide the compatibility with Elasticsearch just on a default stock, and there are some gaps for custom stocks, especially regarding the search functionality, the search, layered navigation, and so on. So this is an independent track, and probably it should be groomed separately, and some tasks should be created in the scope of this track to provide all possible search-related functionality based on the Elasticsearch adapter. The next story currently in the scope of milestone 3 backlog is to provide the multi-sourcing support for bundle product. This story is especially important for us because currently the bundle product is the last product type which is not supported yet for multi-sourcing. And actually this means that bundle product, that we provide the bundle product support just for default stock. So the mod which we call single stock mod, and for all the merchants who have bundle products, they can keep the bundle products on the default source and default stock, or to provide own way of handling bundle products, for example, as streaks guys from the Strix agency implemented that in the scope of their release, which they did at the beginning of November. But we can't advise to all the merchants to make this support by themselves, so that we have to provide this support out of the box of Magento and the MSI installation. Also, why it's also pretty important for us to provide the support for the bundle product, because currently because this fallback and to provide the bundle product support for default stock, we introduce a fallback for the previous index, so the catalog inventory stock status index. And to implement that index, we introduce a MySQL view. And this MySQL view currently introduces some slight performance degradation, which is reproducible on catalog scenarios, on search scenarios, and on work with the shopping cart scenarios, because all of these scenarios currently use the join, so the MySQL join to the stock index. And based on the fact that we are making a fallback to the MySQL view, and under the hood, the MySQL query, which uses MySQL view, is not so fast as a query which use the real index. We actually all of this is introduced the root cause for this slight performance degradation. So as soon as we will provide support for last product type, we would have an ability to drop this fallback, and instead of the legacy index, we can fully switch to the newly created index type, and we would not. So this makes us think that we wouldn't have after that these performance related issues and degradation after that. And that will help us to deprecate the catalog inventory index, and fully switch to the MSI indexation process. Another story is the minimal delivery cost algorithm, and Ricardo implemented this pull request and demonstrated it on a previous demo. And today we can discuss it more deeply, because we already had an ability to test it out, and also we had an ability to make a code review and provide the feedback on a way how this feature is implemented. So we can make the discussion regarding this functionality today. And also another story in the scope of the milestone 3 backlog is to increase the acceptance test coverage for our S0, S1 scenarios, and to fully describe all the test cases in our heap test, because at the time of final regression, we faced with an issue that not all of the test cases provided for MSI, and that was especially critical for such business scenarios as order life cycle, because especially order life cycle introduced quite a lot of bugs related with the quantity calculation and all the calculation process we have in MSI. And last but not least, the store pickup support for multi-sourcing, because especially after the release of MSI, we have quite a lot of requests regarding the store pickup support, and based on the current architecture of MSI, this support is pretty easily to accomplish. So we just need to discuss whether I can describe, for example, how the store pickup can be implemented in based on existing MSI architecture, and we will just discuss whether the priority of this story is high enough to be taken for milestone 3. In any case, I know that guys from Vimo agency already started to work on a project where they want to introduce a store pickup, and they made some consultation with me how this store pickup functionality could be properly implemented based on the way how MSI is implemented right now. So currently, we don't have dedicated item here, but I will add it. So this is like a general improvement on the performance side, because as I already mentioned, especially in a single stock mode, we have the slight performance degradation because of the fallback to our legacy indexation process. So probably it should be introduced separately. Currently, we have a dedicated ticket, and week our new contributor is working on this potential improvement, investigation, and so on. So this is another bullet point to the milestone 3 backlog. So today I propose to discuss in details the distance-based algorithm, because we already have this functionality implemented, and we have our main contributor who created these functionalities, and so that I expect that this conversation gonna be fruitful, and we can finalize all the acceptance criteria and whether anything else should be introduced in the scope of this story. Also, let me introduce some feedback based on the code review I did for this pull request. Because initially we tested the pull request, and from the beginning, Lori and Slava found the blocker issue, which did not allow them to test pull request out, because from the beginning they got the error message not allowing them to just get the geocoordinates for like latitude and longitude. Actually, from my side, I did not face with this issue, and everything went smoothly for me. So probably, like, I'm not sure whether Slava, you are on a meeting. A question to you: whether you had an ability to investigate the root cause of this issue, and whether it's solved now.
No, I was not able to find the root. I just found the error, and I added the tickets to this PR as a comment.
Okay. So it's still under investigation. The main points which I noticed during the code review, I would not mention all of them because the pull request is pretty big one, so it's almost 3,000 lines of code. But the pretty important thing which need to be mentioned is that we apply the same policy regarding the code support as for Magento. So since 2.3.0, when MSI was firstly publicly released in the general availability. As a general availability release, we should apply the backward compatibility policy for all the code released in the scope of the MSI. So currently we are not able to make refactoring, just dropping like public methods of the class, or removing the constructor dependencies, or introducing the mandatory input parameters for object constructors. So we should keep the same policy as Magento. As Magento follows, so all these changes should be introduced in a backward compatible way. Because like we used to make all the changes for MSI, not keeping backward compatibility policy, and all of that was true before the MSI release. Taking into account the general availability release is launched, we have to keep these policies. So this is pretty important stuff, and we will attract attention to all the pull requests for MSI code, and all the pull requests which apply the changes to already released code should follow the backward compatibility policy. Another thing which is pretty important for us is that by the way, that was mentioned during the demonstration on a weekly demo regarding the licensing and whether we are able to freely use this database of the zip codes provided by this external service. And I looked through the license agreement of this creativecommons.org, and actually they allow us to use the database of the zip codes, but we have to mention the URL to the service in source code files. And actually, here I provided the reference. So looks like we're okay with using their database in even for commercial use, but we have to provide the reference that the source of data was from this external service.
Is that enough to put a comment in the code, or do you mean we have to add something in the admin UI?
This is actually a good question. Let me.
Oh, maybe if I can suggest, we could provide some information when we run the command line to download the zip codes.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
that could be a good option without affecting the admin UI.
So this probably will work the best if you'll just provide this in the scope of the command execution.
Because of course, if you don't run the command, basically you cannot use them. So, and it is the exact moment in which you download the zip file. So I think it's perfect.
Igor?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I had an issue with my microphone, so good thing I fixed it. Yeah, my question was similar. It's around where this has to show up. Is it sufficient to put it in the source code, or do we have to put it in the UI, or I guess just when the CLI command runs, where do they have any more detail about where it needs to show up?
Actually, this is so you should see on my screen their license agreement, and here how they describe the appropriate credit.
Okay.
And they don't reference where this should be mentioned.
I'm looking at their knowledge base and found some info. Not sure if that's the correct one, but looking. Ah, never mind that link.
I mean, it does say in there that they prefer a link if possible. That would seem to indicate more of a UI. If we include a link or a reference in the UI somewhere on one of the settings page in the admin, we just have to make sure that it was also translatable.
Maybe make it like a tooltip, or does it need to be in a tooltip, or does it have to be on the page?
That's a good point. I think a tooltip may be fine.
I can ask.
If we have any precedent for this, like any other library or something that we're currently using in Magento that we do this for.
Oh, I'm sure. I can ask UX because I'm going to be speaking with them anyway on a couple things. And I'll ask if they already have precedent and if they've already dealt with these kind of requirements.
And also, let's ask Justin about the legal side of this, if this has any, if he can.
Yeah. Well, actually, another option could be showing the credits when you switch to offline selection system in the admin UI. We could use the you can show and hide information depending on the configuration. So as soon as you enable from the backend, you switch from the Google system to the offline system, you get this message maybe.
Yeah, I think we'd only need to display it on where it's actually configured, not on, say, where the source selection algorithm runs or anything like that, just where it's selected.
Moreover, actually, I'm just looking at this point that they want that it should be indicated if you modify the material. And actually, we can't say whether the data was modified or not, because potentially, like, it could be customized by the third-party developers. And for example, additional data could be installed as well. Or this data could be refined somehow. And we can't just say whether it was used as is, or it was refined or something.
Of course, it could be changed, but our implementation of it, as I understand from what Ricardo has already demonstrated, is just using the data as is. So we're not making like any modification to the distance values that we're getting from the service.
Okay. So it looks like it's more or less clear regarding the licensing, and we can proceed further. And so from the product perspective, I left several technical comments. I don't think that it makes sense to discuss it here. But from the technical perspective, we had pretty interesting situation where like currently we just resolve make a resolving by oops, not secure. Make a geocoding by the data specified on the source editing page. And for example, like this one. So this is already resolved latitude and longitude, but actually we sent all this data to Google Geocoding service. They provide us the geodata. But we noticed that currently we like there could be some issue happening, and here we mentioned the situation like in the easiest case for some zip codes, because like the issue was in a zip code for one of the Ukrainian cities, like UA, probably like this one. So you can see that in this case, the Google Maps actually did not provide the accurate geocoding, and it provided just a geocoordinate of Ukraine in this case. So actually, this point is just on the middle of the country, and you can see from the response that Google was not able to specify that the city and region, and the resolving would be much more accurate if you will just specify zip here. In this particular case, the Google mechanism will determine that this data, so 88,000, is the postcode, but not, for example, like home number or street address or whatever. And in this particular case, you see that the city and region is determined. So you see that the city name is Uzhgorod, and the region is determined, and the geocoordinates provided much more accurate. So it should be comparing to the previous version where it was.
Yeah, it was just a concatenation of strings before.
So this is just the geocoordinates of Ukraine. That's all. So you see that the coordinates are different. Another thing, which is pretty interesting, was that we are making it the geocoding for zip code in Italy, in Milano, and that was 2014-1. And we can see that some zip codes, so the zip codes are not unique, they are unique just in the scope of country. And if we are talking about where it was, about this particular geocode, you can see that the same geocode exists in Milan, and also the same geocode exists in the US. And if we'll specify just the zip code, we can accidentally get the geocoordinates of the US address, but not Italian one.
As far as I remember, actually the country should be added as well.
Yes, but currently we provide just country code. So we specify,
Okay.
but Google is not smart enough to understand the Magento country codes. And that's why, for example, if you provide this coordinate with the zip code for Milan city and also specifying the country code for Italy, like IT, we are still getting the address in Virginia. But if you specify the Italy here,
So when you just send through IT, is that ignored, or is it's not found because
ignored.
IT is not a valid country name?
It's ignored because Google does not recognize this as a country code.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we need some string like the one you see in formatted address actually. So maybe it's just a matter of string composition.
Yeah, so at least it would be much easier if you just provide the country value, so the full name of the country. So like even I just tested it today that even specifying the zip code and the full country name gives us much better results than the country code and the value of zip without the specifying zip explicitly. And another thing, I was just thinking whether it makes sense or not, just to, because currently, like, I was tested all these changes, just checking the geo coordinates given by the result of request to the Google Maps API. But maybe it makes sense to introduce small Google Map here and just show the marker, because it would be the most visible way for merchant to see whether the geocoding made correctly or not, and taking into account that this is just for internal for admin part, so it would not take too much geo request, so merchant no need to pay for this request.
Okay, and it works. What do you think about filling also state and province and street name and city if you're missing them? Because in this way you can have an immediate feedback. Because even with Google Map, if you're using Google Map, of course you have a Google API, but maybe you have an API that is not valid for map and valid for geocoding and so on. It can be messy sometimes.
You mean that the Google developer key that they have is not?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if they are the same actually. If the geocoding key is the same for the Google Map.
Yeah, I think they might. I think they might be different.
Actually, it's the same, but at the time, like we can just proceed with the Google Maps API registration. So at the time of the registration, you are asked for what products you want to use the API key. So the getting started restrict API.
Because otherwise we can put a link, something like verify your position and link to Google bypassing latitude and longitude as an alternative, I mean.
So here at the time of the registration, you can specify for what purposes you're going to use the Google API. So for the geocoding, you should specify places. And if you want to show maps on your site, you should also have the checkbox for maps.
But also, doesn't the current implementation of the algorithm use routes? So they'd need that as well.
Direction.
Yeah, it is the distance metrics.
Yep, this is the distance metrics. So currently we use routes and places.
Yeah.
But not using maps. So if you want to play the maps to the course admin page.
But don't we have maps already somewhere else?
No.
Magento.
No.
No. Okay.
My other concern, Igor, is we are adding this Google API support for MSI, but I'm just asking, does it worth to add to Magento in general? Because as far as now, it's very coupled to the MSI implementation.
I don't think we need to introduce it to Magento in general, and we did not want to introduce, because we already had several conversations regarding whether Google Maps should be introduced to Magento in general, but it always was postponed because especially when Google Maps changed the licensing, because
Okay.
now from the beginning it was possible to use Google Maps for free even for commercial purposes, but probably 2 or 3 years ago they reconsider their license agreement, and now all the usage of the Google Maps is not for free, and you would be charged from the very first request, but the
Okay, I see. Okay, if it will happen, we will proxy.
Mhm. I just why I raise this question regarding maps, because I've seen that there is a point to mistake and the incorrect, not actually incorrect geocoding, but the issue that Google can't recognize correctly what the address data we provided. So we can refine it, specifying the zip and providing the correct country name, which would be recognizable by Google, but still it could be an issue. And if you'll just provide the marker, it could be more user-friendly.
It is not a problem, and now I'm thinking we could have the same problem with the shipping address. So should we add some kind of map even there, maybe highlighting the path or something like that? Because my point is that here you can manually change latitude and longitude, but you cannot do the same in the source selection page. So, I mean, you cannot manually adjust.
What do you mean? So at the time the shipment is created, to override the coordinates?
Yeah, so basically when you create the shipment, you can choose between priority and distance-based algorithm. And when you do that, it's almost running under the hood. You have no interaction, so you just have to trust it. So you don't know if the geocoding is fine and what is the actual distance. So if we have this kind of problem when parsing the address, I think we can have the same problem with the shipping address, not only with the source address. So I think we should define something like we should add some additional interaction in the source selection algorithm page.
Potentially, just potentially, we can describe a map and just even build the route from the source destination address.
That was the idea, but it is quite easy, I think. Well, actually, it's never easy, but we can implement that. My problem is what can we do to change the real location if the geocoding was wrong?
I mean, we could. I mean, it will resolve to something. It may be completely wrong, like in the middle of the ocean. Either we can allow them to override it by entering coordinates, which they're unlikely to know because it's a shipping address of a customer. It's not an address they're familiar with. Or we allow them to, again, drag and drop a point, which you can do with a Google integration as well. But how would they know the correct place to to get it to. It's also not an address they're familiar with.
Yeah, it makes sense actually. Yeah.
But
So we can just display it and let the admin to decide, let the merchant to decide if to trust it or to manually select the source depending on his preference.
I mean, the way it works already is that these are all proposed shipments, so that they have the ability to override that. That's already built in.
Yeah.
I think if we get a failure or some sort of error in geocoding from Google, maybe we could surface that.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay.
But it looks like, I don't know whether Google will return errors there. Like in the examples you were walking through there, Igor, it seems like it's trying to fail in a friendly manner and do its best guess, depending on the information you give it. Which means it may just be broader than you expect. Like with the example is if you give an address in the Ukraine and it doesn't understand enough about that address to figure out the latitude and longitude, then it may default to just the center of Ukraine. Which, would still be useful for a merchant shipping across countries, but for a Ukrainian merchant only shipping to the Ukraine, that would not be useful.
Mm-hmm. So
maybe we just need to check whether we receive, what is the response we get back from Google and whether there's any error code in that. If it makes sense to display that to the user.
actually, yeah, we can handle.
We can see the approximate location type.
Yeah.
Okay, so
because it should be, I don't remember how it works actually, but you should have approximate if the address is not complete, as far as I remember.
We can rely on these address components because, for example, you see like.
So you mean if the components are missing?
Yep. Because the component just Ukraine.
Can you try adding a real address? Because as far as I remember, you have different values for location type, actually. I think location type is more appropriate for this kind of check.
Okay, provide the address.
And yeah, we can also give a textual feedback, actually. A map feedback and a textual feedback of the real address recognition.
Should I use some address here right now?
Do you need an address? A valid one?
I can use like.
Yeah, whatever you like, actually.
This is my home address. Oops. And zip. Looks like my.
You live nowhere.
Yeah. I don't know why.
Okay, no, anyway, don't worry. I will check by myself.
Here we go. Sorry, let me share one thing real quick. Okay. So hopefully you can see that, but this looks like the possible values for location type. So we were seeing approximate there in the result. And these ones would indicate it was more accurate.
But But making the geocoding by zip code, we would be always given the approximate, I believe.
Yeah. But that's, I guess if we pass the address for shipping address, it will
Yes, we do.
probably come back as rooftop sometimes, or approximate other times if it's not able to do that.
Let's check by let's check for our office in Austin.
All right, I will stop sharing this, but I'll drop it in the chat.
I don't remember it precisely. Like
78758.
58.
I think so.
For the Austin office? Yeah, 58.
Yep.
The address is 11501 Domain Drive. 11501, Lori.
11.5.
0101 Domain Drive.
1001.
Yeah, it's in the chat right now. Check out the Zoom chat. 11501 Domain Drive.
Zoom chat. Give me a second.
I think it's 11501. I may be wrong.
No, you're right. My
Yeah.
thing didn't copy the whole number.
Oh,
I think
okay.
maybe another problem in the address parsing is that I'm not respecting actually the Google order. I'm noticing now because first I'm sending the street address and Google wants the postcode usually first. So maybe it's just a matter of order. Looking back, I mean, to the previous problem.
Yeah, actually.
And I'm missing even some punctuation.
Yeah, so the location time geometric center.
And Igor, you're not sharing screen anymore. So.
Yeah, not sorry. So
Right, okay.
And
I also want to see if we can send something more structured than a single string, because I'd like to send, this is the zip code, this is the city name and whatever, but I didn't find anything.
Let's get it less precise. Still geometric center.
It looks like they have something called component filtering. So in what you're passing to them, you can break those things out and specify them individually. So, and it says you can also, if you send an address, you can optionally send components as well.
Yeah, and it looks like those components will accept country code rather than fully qualified country name as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah, that
Okay.
would save us a step of, mapping the names.
Yeah, I tossed a link in the chat for that.
Yep.
Okay. As far as I can see, there is also a partial match.
So yeah, by the way, there is dedicated component filtering for the postal code, and we can specify the postal code as a independent component filtering at the same as the country. So this probably should work. So the only question we have whether we need to use Google Maps, and actually whether we need to play the map to improve the visibility, usability, and etc. Or we're still proceeding with the same UI we already have. What do you think, Mark?
You mean, do we need to introduce like a map
Yep.
selector to the page?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think we need to do that. The only consideration was if we get back an approximate response, whether we pop a notification, it's like the informational on-page notification within the admin.
You mean like a text notification or like?
Yeah.
But currently taking into account that we have just two required fields like zip code and country. Like I believe for most of the cases, it's gonna be like at least by default, it's gonna be approximate the address type.
Well, it depends. Are you proposing that we add? It would really be. It could be two maps. One of this. Well, actually, no. It wouldn't show the sources. So just a map of the delivery address. We could show that, but if it's just informational, it's unclear what the merchant admin's going to do at that point. So if they can't update the address, it's not useful to them, and they may not know how to update the address. I mean, they might not know the correct location.
Maybe it can be interesting to show the path, maybe.
It might add some more value, but we're in the same position of what will they do with it if it's wrong?
Nothing. They just aware that the location is correct or not.
At least they can switch to another algorithm, for example, because there is a possibility to manually switch to another type of algorithm, or just neglect the suggested result by the distance-based algorithm and manually choose what sources should be useful to fulfill the order.
Yeah, I would still probably put this at lower priority than other items that we have, also because the UI would be pretty complex, given that right now we present all the different sources, so we would need a map with route per source as well to all lay out on the page.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so
can I suggest just to show the recognized address from Google Map, just showing what is the address that Google Map understood from you? Something like that too. I don't know, I'm just suggesting.
Yeah, that's not like we could have customer entered address.
Exactly.
Customer shipping address and then Google verified address, essentially.
Yeah, something like that.
So again, that's just informational, but if it looks completely wrong, they can, do some lookup themselves, go back in and edit the shipping address if they want, switch an algorithm. So there are some steps they could take.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the decision we made regarding this story is that we are not introducing any UI modification, except that we will provide the some text notification regarding how Google recognize the address at the time of the source selection algorithm, just to make sure that Google recognize the shipping address correctly. And we'll just improve the Google geocoding request via the more refined and the precise like address formatting, specifying the postal code and the country code there.
Yeah, so we'll send in the components that represent our best information about the address, and then display both what they entered and what Google returned as informational. So probably need to get Eugene to do a mock-up on that.
Sorry, markup on what exactly?
On how we would show that information on the source selection page.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
So I'll check with him on that.
Okay, cool. Looks like we are running out of time for today, and there is no room to discuss other stories. I can schedule another grooming session for the next week, maybe Tuesday, if this works for you, Mark. And we can continue further discussion of another stories. And
sounds good.
Yeah, and looks like we finalize at least the product requirement for the distance-based algorithm, and we can proceed to other stories.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ricardo, for your participation.
You're welcome.
I believe we got pretty fruitful discussion and finalize the set of the acceptance criteria. And so, Mark, you will contact Evgen Banach regarding the UI?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So looks like that's all for today. Thank you guys for your time. Mark, you would be able on Tuesday if I'll schedule the meeting for the same time as today?
It looks like either Monday or Wednesday would be better, but I could do Tuesday if that's what works for everybody else. I just have to move one other thing.
Okay. I'll schedule on Wednesday.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you very much, and have a good day, guys.
All right. Thanks, everybody.